Small one.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the Story Behind the Stories for the January 6th edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. First edition of the new year. Wow. Well, I guess technically not true. We had our year in review the week before. But Happy New Year to everyone. And this week I'm joined by Ken Waddell. Ken, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to help out once in a while.
Yeah, always great to have you on the show. Diving right into this week's paper, we do sadly start with a rather unfortunate story, a big story, something that happened in Gladstone. I'm sure there's a lot of people aware already, but there was a rather tragic fire that happened in that community that affected people that were living there, about 15, 20 people I think it was estimated, and there was sadly one death, so very sorry to hear that. Lots of people displaced, of course, and on still important but lesser degree, of course, to the human aspect of it, but it was a pretty historic site to my understanding, so sad to see that loss as well.
Yeah, it was a horrible fire, Christmas morning of all times, but the firefighters, as they always do, from Gladstone and assisted by Neepawa and Plumas, did a valiant job of suppressing the fire. So there was 2 buildings lost. The former, and we got a little bit of a mistake in our article here, it's not the pharmacy building, it's a former pharmacy building. Pharmacy's fine in Gladstone, at least last time I heard it was anyway, and the hotel, and significant damage to the Galloway Brothers building, which is another historic building. But looking at history, it's not the first time that fire has wiped out a big chunk of Main Street in Gladstone. In the 70s, there was a big store, and a couple of other buildings were burned, which have since, of course, been replaced by newer buildings. But this was pretty significant because it's a big hotel. Even by small town standards, it was a pretty big hotel. Years ago when I worked in Gladstone, and sometimes after that, ate meals in that restaurant. Always was, depending on the cook, of course, but it was usually pretty good meals. But the loss of life, that's beyond all this other stuff. I mean, for a person to lose their life in a fire is a horrible thing. But one of the things, Casper, was that I was told that, I think it's mentioned in our thumbs up here, is that in addition to the firefighters, one person who took quite a bit of risk to their own life and equipment was Pat Baker, P. Baker Backhoe, because I was told, I wasn't there, but I was told that he took the trackhoe and went right out onto the rubble while it was burning underneath him and pulled away material from the north side, the Galloway Brothers building, to try and reduce the damage to that building, because there is smoke and water damage in that building.
Right.
Interesting side note, the Galloway Brothers building, I believe, was built in the 1880s, certainly long before 1900. And I was told, or I read over the years, the Galloway Brothers, it was an outfitter. They supplied harness and machinery and food and flour and everything to the settlers and travelers, fur traders, I guess, to a certain extent. They were called an outfitter. And at one time, I read that they had 100 people working in that store, believe it or not, because everything was hand labor, loading, unloading, bringing it in off the railway after the railway came to town. Very historic building. Then I'm thinking, it's got to be 20 years ago now, it was bought and by Mike Wehrhahn and totally redone and made into offices. There's government offices in there. There's some living suites, residences up on the 2nd floor. It's a beautiful building. It was a hardware store back in the 70s, I think in McLeod's maybe, and it's just been there. It's just an anchor right near the river and close to the railway as well, but at the north end of the main street there in Gladstone. And it's going to cost a lot of money to fix it. So I guess it depends how the insurance kicks in and whether the owners, I don't even know who the current owners are, whether it's still Mr. Wehrhahn or not, but there's going to be some big questions there of how much, how much money has to go back into it to bring it back so that it is usable again. It'd be great if it can be, but I understand that the hotel owners are looking to rebuild, but of course that'll depend on insurance and cleanup and everything else, and that's going to be a huge cost and probably a year's delay before the business can be back up and running again. But they're hoping to reestablish, because they hadn't owned the building all that long, I think less than a year. But reports I got was that felt they were doing fairly well within the community, had good support in the community. I'm sure they would. And so rebuilding is an option that's being considered. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear that they're considering rebuilding, and hopefully there is good coverage for this, because I know these things are quite expensive. I mean, a new building in general is expensive, but, you know, all the damage costs and all that sort of thing tying into it, yeah, it's...
Yeah, with a house costing $250,000, $300,000 for a ordinary kind of a house, you can imagine what it would cost for a hotel. You're talking in the millions, you know.
Yeah.
Depending how big you go and how elaborate, but it's a lot of money. It's a huge commitment to, you know, I can see where somebody would be thinking, well, if we just clean up the site and walk away and sell the land, you know, that's got to be a temptation, but it's certainly not good for the business community if that were to happen. So.
Yeah, yeah. And it was relieving to hear as well that, in the very least, foul play at the moment isn't suspected. So
that's a big relief.
Definitely a relief for sure.
Big relief, yeah, because that's always the question, you know, is how did it start, and you know, was it set, and those questions have been set aside, at least for now, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always a comfort, I think.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Moving on to some perhaps lighter stories, thankfully. We have actually a big thing coming up for Neepawa, a health center meeting regarding the new hospital, something that has been long awaited for the community in terms of getting a new hospital. The other one, current one, is quite old. Still doing good, but you know, always need those improvements, more space as needs arise. Yeah, the new details for that will be revealed on January 12th. We got this actually just before we went to print, these details. It could be interesting, I think.
Well, I hope it'll be interesting. The meeting is scheduled for the 12th at 5 o'clock. Which is a bit of an odd time, I think, to have, because I mean, lots of people are just getting off work or may not even be off work yet. So I long ago, I've been at this business for over 30 years, and I long ago stopped questioning whether there was any sanity in the way governments do things. But anyway, 5 o'clock seems like an odd time, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll fill the place. I do hope that the Legion Hall is full, because this is a very, very important meeting. It'll be a time for people to have some input and feedback onto what's going into this. We know it's 65 beds. We know it's, I think, three-story building. We're going to find out exactly on the plot where the building will sit. We're going to find out more details about the access to it. I think it's going to be on the approach off of Highway 16 opposite Manitoba Hydro, but I don't know that. Then there'll be lots of other questions, you know, 65 beds, compared to 30 odd we have now. You were talking about the old hospital, built 1953, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Renovated in the 1980s, renovated again in the 1990s. Not exactly sure when the chemo unit went on, but the new hospital will have chemo, will have obstetrics, surgery, which we have now, but expanded, an expanded ER. And supposedly we're going to be having dialysis, which we don't have now.
Right.
The person has to go to Brandon or Dauphin, I would think, for dialysis, Portage maybe. And dialysis is sometimes multiple times per week or multiple times per month, so cut down on some traveling for some people who unfortunately may need a kidney dialysis program. So yeah, it's everybody you talk to is very excited about it, but apprehensive too. Like, I mean, the old hospital, like you say, is doing okay, but they're doing the best they can with an old facility, but it's at its wit's end, so to speak, in terms of there's only so many things you can do to keep it going, and it's been renovated. Interesting side story is that I talked to somebody who worked there in maintenance, and they said that, ironically, some of the stuff that was installed in 1953, plumbing-wise and so like that, was still lasting better than the stuff that was put in 85 and in 95. Some of that old stuff that went in the early 50s was good stuff, but it all has to be. It'll be interesting too what happens to that building, because whether it's demolished or not, you know, we went through this nonsense with, and that's biased, I guess, but I think it's right. With the shut down Eastview Lodge, they fiddled around with that for so long that the building became not only obsolete but damaged. You know, pipes froze and that kind of silly nonsense, and of course it never got utilized. It got bulldozed at great expense.
Yeah.
And that building had been built almost entirely with local funds, and was given to the RHA, and basically the town and the community, all we got back out of that was an empty lot, which they're trying to sell off for housing now, with some success and mixed success. And it may happen the same thing there. If they don't act quickly once the building is closed, they'll lose the building, and then you got another big chunk of land to do something with, which is okay. But the building, Eastview Lodge, in my opinion, could have been reutilized and should have been reutilized, but it wasn't. So.
Yeah, I think, because I remember the building being there. We had several walks through the summer going down that way to the pool. I remember it being there and it being in use. I'd actually been inside, I think, a couple times for some program or something when I was in high school, I think. I think we were stopping in to help out with some stuff that way.
That was decades ago, though, right?
Yeah, ages ago. And then, yeah, it wasn't too often. It was like really just like once or twice, I think. And then, of course, it being shut down, so there wasn't a whole lot going on there, of course. And I think people have been hoping it would be converted into apartments, because it was already kind of set up in a way that could work for that.
Yeah, there were several plans brought forward with people wanting to convert them into about 50 units for seniors housing or whatever. But I guess more optimistically looking at this meeting that's coming up, Casper, is that really would encourage people to come out to it. Make time, get off work early if you have to get off work early, whatever, be there, because the doctors and the medical staff, the healthcare staff, they've seen most of what we'll see on the 12th. But general public, and including me, us as newspaper people, haven't seen this. So it's going to be new news to us, and be interesting to see what they come up with. And they are the architects and healthcare, Manitoba Health and Prairie Mountain Health Region, Brian Schoonbart, the head of the Prairie Mountain Health, they are looking for feedback. You know, do you like this or not like this? Is there things that you'd like to change? This is one chance, and there may be others, but there's one chance for us as a community to say, we like this, or we would like something different, or whatever, and have some input. So when all is said and done and the building is finished, you know, it's like after an election. If you haven't voted, then you better not be complaining. If we have opportunity to go and speak at this meeting, we should listen, speak, whatever, and have some input, because this is the most important development in this town in my recent memory, for sure. I mean, obviously High Life is a huge thing, but that's taken 30-some years, over 30 years, to get where it is today. And the school was a big deal, and the new school and new daycare was a big deal, for sure. But this is a largest single non-business investment that the community has seen ever. $127 million is the biggest investment that this community has ever seen since 1883, for sure. And we will have some input into it. We're all paying for it, so we should. Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully, people are able to get down there and learn more and put their input out there. We have another good development for the Neepawa community. Smaller scale, but still always welcome. This in terms of the Neepawa Men's Shed. They got a early Christmas present just before the holidays, before all new staff took their holidays as well. And they actually received about $1,000 from Miles for Mental Health. Miles for Mental Health is, of course, a mental wellness group that's been in the community for a while. I think since about 2017. I think that's when they had their first fun run there. And has been a long-time supporter of the Neepawa Men's Shed as well. And they do have an application form on their website that people can apply to and try and get funds that way for supporting different projects and this and that. But this was actually something that the Neepawa Men's Shed did not apply for. Miles for Mental Health had actually just seen the work that the Men's Shed has been doing in the community. And of course, just, what the Men's Shed stands for, supporting men's mental health and helping them along with that. So great to see this happening.
Yeah, I've talked to some of the people involved with Men's Shed. In fact, one of the projects we featured earlier in the year about the lighted cross that they built for Calvary Chapel Church. Happens to be the church that my wife and I attend. It's a beautiful piece of work, and every time you look at it, you think, yeah, that was done by local guys who are, giving back to the community and at the same time, helping each other out. The whole mental health situation is something that I think we're all beginning to grasp, and that is that you often don't know about person's mental health issues until it's too late.
Yeah.
And we've had, may as well be blunt about it, we've had within the circle of people we know, I'm not saying within our friends as such, but circle of people that Christine and I know, since last spring there's been 4 suicides. And all of them were out of the blue, at least unless to people who were very, very close to them and they maybe had some suspicion there was trouble. But generally speaking, and men more maybe than women, I'm told, and I think I've observed that, tend not to let it be known that they're not doing well. Never mind suicide, but just struggling. And it's real. I mean, things get to you, and you get depressed, and you get angry, and whatever. And I'm really good at the anger part. You saw that yesterday. I wasn't angry at you, but I won't say who I was angry at. But we got it solved. I'm fine. Take a deep breath, Ken. I'm fine. But no, seriously, this is good work they do, and good work in the community, and good work for each other. I hope there's more of that kind of thing happening in the community. I know that everybody's very aware of the situations that mental health it's not talked about. If I walked in here with a broken arm and a cast on it, people, oh, Ken, that's too bad. You broke your arm. What'd you do, you silly old fool? You fall over, and you deal with it. Walk in with a frown on my face and what's the matter with him? Guess I better not talk about it.
Yeah.
And that isn't the way it should be. So this is really, really a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's in general, things like that can be hard for people to talk about, just in general, but especially if you're the one that's experiencing the issues, and in particular, for sure, men as well, because there is different sort of, I guess, societal expectations that's sort of put out there, spoken or not. So it can be a lot harder for men to deal with things like this. It's hard for anyone to deal with, but just the different pressures that one might experience. So very good to see this group continuing to get that support, because they do offer a very good support group and just activities to keep you busy and doing things and giving a sense of camaraderie, I feel.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Our next story is another big one, actually. Not in terms of a group, but actually just an individual from the community. Quite big, I must say. Congratulations to, I believe it was Kimberly Kalbaki.
Yes.
Yep, that's the name there. From Neepawa. Won quite a big prize, $250,000, Ken. I gotta say, I can certainly just feel how happy she is looking at the photo. The big smile on her face there.
Yeah, no, Kimberly's pretty happy with that, and she had, in the story you can read about it, she has some plans for the money, and not surprisingly, it's not all for herself. She wants to help family members and stuff like that. So, very pleased for her. That's kind of a neat thing to win that. I believe it was at 7-Eleven, wasn't it? Is that where she bought the ticket? I believe
7-Eleven, I believe. Yeah.
So lotteries are a bit of a long shot, so to speak. But anyway, that was good. I used the word long shot there because I saw it on the page here. The headline for another little story is a long shot but no gamble at the New Year's Eve party. There is a local group of two people, Blair McLaughlin and Ron Nordstrom, who have a little band. They go around and sing. They're actually going to be in Brandon pretty soon, singing at Lady of the Lake, actually. But they were at Boston Pizza on New Year's Eve. It was a great show. My wife and I were there. Place was full, and they were pretty tired by the time they're done. They started at 7. They didn't finish till midnight. They had some breaks, of course, in between, but they were sagging a little bit at the end of the night. But anyway, it was great entertainment and wonderful to see local people who were able to get up and do that, and have a few laughs and some fun with their neighbors and friends and whatever. But it was good to see. Boston Pizza hosted it. Obviously, they like selling a few drinks and some meals and everything, so they had a good night. Report was it was the best New Year's Eve party from a customer point of view, sales point of view, whatever, that they've had in the 6 years that Boston Pizza has been open.
Oh, wow.
So I can see these guys maybe being booked for next year already, or pretty soon anyway. But yeah, they call themselves Long Shot, but they're not a long shot. They're the real deal. So anyway.
Nice. Yeah, that's good to hear, especially with how big it was for response. So excellent. Yeah.
As people go through the paper this week, you'll see some things. We don't have them on our list here, but we just chat about them a little bit as we wind down the program. It's on the looking back page, which Casper does. She toils away in the dungeon of the building here. Well, it's not that bad. It's fairly well lit.
It's got good heating.
Yeah, it's warm. It's dry, and we do feed her. Well, we let her go so she can have a meal once in a while. But down in the dungeon and we do have our archive books here, nearly every copy of the Neepawa Press and Neepawa Banner. Neepawa Press back to 1896, and Neepawa Banner to 1989. And it's quite the place. If you come in, we'll give you a tour. We won't let you in there by yourself, though. There's only about 3 people from the archives group and Casper that are allowed to go in there. And that's a bit of a story on itself, because Neepawa Press used to, out of the goodness of their heart, just let people go in. And people would actually have the nerve to walk off with some of the old papers.
Yeah.
Which is not really fair. Anyway, people will enjoy the picture of the late Larry Evans and Murray Wilkie on the picture when they were playing hockey. They traveled all over the world playing hockey, old-timers hockey. Quite the pair of characters, and loved their hockey and loved traveling, and so that's the feature story from 1983. So. Yeah,
and it was quite interesting to come across that. I don't think I was aware of their hockey history, but some familiarity with Larry Evans, and I'd heard Murray Wilkie's name before, I believe, but they'd gone all the way over to Russia, so quite a trip to play some hockey. I'm sure it was an incredible and unique experience for them, and it's kind of nice seeing their little hats there, kind of like cowboy style with the club name on it. So that's pretty cool find.
Yeah, no, they did a lot of traveling, and yeah, they were both, especially Larry was a tremendous ambassador for the community and for the hockey world and for the bowling world. I mean, they ran the bowling alley, he and his father. First his father and him, and then he by himself for many, many years. No longer, unfortunately, do we have a bowling alley here. But he was a character, to say the least, and dedicated to youth, and dedicated to the sport of bowling and to the sport of hockey. He was a very good hockey player. I actually played hockey against him when he was quite a bit older than me, and there was no taking the puck off of Larry. Like they talk about having soft hands. Well, he had maybe soft hands, but they were strong hands too. He didn't get the puck away from Larry. But anyway, it was some good times back there. So, but anyway, Yeah, this week, I hope people will take a chance to take an opportunity to read my column. It's a little bit different, but it's called Context and Capacity. And I think it's important in this day and age when if we want to be, we're flooded with news, and not just newspapers, but magazines, radio, television, but more importantly, I guess, cable TV and the internet. And I mean, you can run yourself crazy trying to figure out what's going on, but I'm asking people to keep things in perspective and context. What's the context of the story? And you can read the column and see. And what about capacity? And because I've been involved with this, and lots of people are way smarter at this than I am, but because you hear something doesn't mean it's true. Even if you see something, you're not even sure. You know, I used to say, don't believe anything you hear and only believe half of what you see. And that's being a little cynical, I guess. But actually in the column I say, be skeptical. Don't be cynical, but be skeptical. Figure out what's going on. Like what is happening in the world. And because when you hear some news stories, you know, that's not true. You know, that's not feasible. And there are a lot of people out there, especially in the internet world, who are quite willing and openly willing to lie.
Yeah.
To lie to us about things that are pretty important, some of them, you know. Like, it's not like an April Fool's joke. They treat really serious news stories as if it was an April Fool's joke, and that's just not right. That's just not morally right. No matter,
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's definitely not the way to handle it. But yeah, it's always good to be cautious and do some research and make sure that you have all the facts with everything that's out there.
Did you read Rita's column? Did you have a chance to read it yet?
Yeah, I had a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd have to read it again to refresh my memory more on it, but it was a good column when I initially read it for proofing and all that.
The title on it is called "I'm Woke," and we hear a lot about being woke and the importance of being woke, which I'm assuming from what she says there, you know, be aware of what's going on and be open to new things. And she gives pretty good definitions of where she's at with the whole idea of being woke. I rankle a little at some of the stuff we're told, but that's my opinion. But no, she does a good job, and I certainly appreciate what she's saying, and I even agree with most of it this time. But anyway, I didn't see our time sign there. Where are we at for time?
We are actually very close to the end.
Well, then I guess I better quit talking.
Yeah, maybe do a quick shout out here. There is a local fundraiser, which is also on the next page beside Rita's, page 5. So definitely take a look at that. And of course, there's some other opinion pieces, editorials in there.
Four thumbs up?
Yep, 4 thumbs up. So be sure to take a look at that. Of course, we don't have time to cover it on the show today. Always way too much that we can't quite get to it, but good problem to have. But thank you all for joining us today. If you could contact us with any news tips, or if you want to send in your own opinions, thumbs up and editorial, because we do take submitted editorial sometimes, or if you want to send a letter to the editor, please send that to news@neepawabanner.com. Or if you have any photos for us, we'll gladly take those there as well. And of course, free paper, we rely on ads to keep it going. So send those to ads@neepawabanner.com. We'd be happy to have your support. Once again, from myself and for Ken, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time.